Well, good evening, Jeremy. It's great to be back with you tonight talking about another debate. I think we both can agree that tonight was a much better showing than 2 weeks ago. I can tell you from the Republican standpoint, the candidate we saw tonight standing on the stage was the one we needed to see 2 weeks ago. Arguably, we'd be in a very different spot in the race today had President Trump showed up the first debate the way he did tonight.
Absolutely. And I think Democrats will probably tell you tonight, too, that they were kind of hoping for Trump 1.0 from debate number one. But I definitely do agree. The president showed up tonight in that even level presidential tone that his team was probably hoping would show up. But I would also say that Vice President Biden, when he showed up as well tonight, he gave a very similar performance to what was before. It's not a spectacular performance by any means. It's not going to win any awards. But Joe Biden's job tonight was to just hold steady in the center. He is supposed to be out there reminding voters they've either one, voted for the right candidate, or number two, should be voting for him because he's been consistent. He is the Democrat who will lead the party forward and would be an excellent foe for the president. I wonder, Lindsay, if there were any key points that you think the president really wanted to hit tonight.
I think the president and his team wanted to depict a different individual tonight than you saw on the debate stage the first go around. They wanted to highlight his accomplishments from school choice to HBCUs to criminal justice reform. You heard the president talk about what he's done in the last 4 years. You heard him talk about the economy. He mentioned how it's easy for the former vice president to hide in his basement, but that the everyday American can no longer afford to do that. They need their businesses open. They need to return to work to support their livelihood. And as we've discussed numerous times before, the president is strongest when he's talking about the economy and his accomplishments. And tonight he was able to do that. Jeremy, what's interesting to look at is you have 50 million people who've already voted. Who are both of the candidates speaking to, and does that matter at this point when we are so close to election day? We're 2 weeks out. Who are the candidates trying to retain at this point, and what votes are they after?
Yeah, I would say that not since the Civil War have we had as many mail in ballots as a percentage of votes coming in at any one given period of time. First, I think it's just phenomenal. So many people have already voted before, but it also changes the game, when it comes to who people are speaking to. For starters, I would say the Democrats very much want to speak to people of color and those who live in underserved communities, for example. So, black men, for example, are a key voting demographic. But also, we have to remember that the Latinx community is also at play as well. Vice President Biden has been polling extremely well compared to Secretary Clinton back in 2016. But when you dig down deeper into states like Nevada and you look at states like Florida, for example, he is polling lower by about 10 to 12 points with Latinx voters. And, that's one of those things that should really cause the Democrats some concern, and it is causing them concern. You saw today that the vice president spent a lot of time trying to speak to issues that impact those communities. For example, tonight he talked a lot about healthcare. He talked a lot about the COVID-19 crisis and how it's dramatically impacted people of color. And I think at the end of the day, the vice president for the next 2 weeks is probably going to want to focus on those areas because we could be in a situation again this year where on the surface the vice president polls very well, but at the end of the day ends up losing the election. Do you think the president is also going after those demographics as well?
I think tonight you saw the president give air cover to soft Republicans, to Republicans who like his policies but may not like him as an individual, giving them the cover they need to feel comfortable to go out and vote for him on election day. I also think that you right now are looking at get out the vote efforts. While you've had millions who have already voted, there are still millions more to vote. And what does that get out the vote effort look like? And who is able to bring it home in this final stretch?
Yeah, for sure. And the thing that I look at here as well, that has given some of our Democratic friends a little bit of concern, is the fact that Biden continues to have to defend attacks about not being far left enough. And the Democratic Party, as we know, is extremely diverse. It's large. And every time he says that, those more progressive voters who might have stayed home in 2016 because of Secretary Clinton and are not motivated to get out to vote this year, they're going to continue to stay home again. I also want to point out that Vice President Biden tonight fell into one of the president's brilliantly laid traps when it came to big oil. He spoke about the issue. He said he wanted to, rein in the big oil companies. And while at a surface level that might seem inconsequential, it does tie, the vice president back to some of those more progressive policies where those moderate voters who might have been convinced by people like John Kasich to vote for the president, for the vice president, might be rethinking that decision. The other area that Democrats should be concerned right now is particularly specific when it comes to those Senate races. It is fair to say that the Senate is in play this year, despite the president saying the House was in play, which was a little awkward when he said that. But I think Democrats are counting on a lot of Republicans not showing up to the polls because they don't like the president, and so they won't vote for the Senate candidate who's on their ballot. I think every time Biden talks about some of those more progressive issues, it does spur a lot of people who would vote Republican in the Senate to come out and vote at the end of the day. Which, they should be concerned. I think you said earlier, Lindsay, we could be in a situation where, if as polling suggests, if Biden continues to do weak in some of these groups, he could win the popular vote again, but he could lose the Electoral College, which would be devastating.
Absolutely. Right now, if you're in the polling industry, you're scratching your head. You're wondering, what does this look like? You are gun shy. You don't want to make the mistakes that were made in 2016 and be blown off the map. We are looking at an election where you could have an overwhelmingly high support in the popular vote, but lose the Electoral College. I think that path to 270 is still very much in play when it comes to both parties. While people want to discount the president and say it's over, Biden's leading in the national polls, if we learned anything from 2016, it's that you can't sleep easy at night resting your head on those polls. That there are voters out there, and it really does come down to election day. I think one thing tonight, as we talked about who is the president speaking to, the president did a great job in, again, going back to pulling the narrative he wants, that we've talked about where our clients could benefit, is bringing the narrative back to Biden as a career politician. You had 47 years, 8 years under Obama. Why didn't you do any of the things you're saying you want to? Why, Biden? You say time and time again, when you're in office, you are going to do the following items. Why didn't you accomplish them while you were in office? And this is a valuable lesson because it's not the question you're asked, it's the question you want to answer. So when you're sitting there in that chair, what is the narrative that you want to deliver? You are in control. And we saw that tonight on both sides. There were moments where Biden absolutely pulled it back to what he wanted to talk to, where he was extremely strong to a point we've discussed before, where he looked head on into the camera and spoke directly to the American people.
Yeah, for sure. And I will also say that I think one other thing our clients could probably learn from the discussion tonight is sometimes it's okay to go into the abstract. The vice president's campaign has been, from the start, talking about issues that aren't necessarily tangible, but about the issues of like morality, things that are more abstract in character. The vice president spends a lot of time talking about that he got into this race because he saw what happened in Charlottesville, and he thought that he needed to help save the soul of the nation. You can't really do that, physically, but it is like this idea of the American spirit that the vice president is talking about. I think often when the president lobbed an attack against a policy, Biden often came back to his character, and his social media team tonight was very much retweeting and sharing those posts where the vice president was talking about that he is a man of impeccable character, he has integrity, that he would be a great foil to the president at the end of the day. I think that in the next 2 weeks, since I think we're about, 12 days out when we're having this conversation, that we're going to see Biden lean hard into character. We're going to see him lean hard into healthcare because Judge Barrett will be on the Supreme Court by that time. And we're also going to see him really focus on the president's lack of a response to COVID-19. I think we're in for a wild adventure. Barack Obama is on the campaign trail now, and he is a force for which to be reckoned whenever he gets out to mobilize voters. I think he can be very helpful in mobilizing some of those people of color who might not be as excited to vote for the vice president, especially those who are in a younger demographic. I expect to see a little bit of action with Bernie Sanders, perhaps, to try and help stir up some of that base as well. but I also think we're going to see a lot more of Senator Kamala Harris over the course of the next 2 weeks, really tackling those swing states. And I'm thinking specifically about Nevada, for example. I'm thinking about North Carolina. I'm thinking about Pennsylvania, where you are, and I'm thinking that over the next 2 weeks, like we're gonna get real tired of seeing them if we're in any of those states. I wonder what you think the next 12 days looks like for POTUS and his team.
For the president, you'll see a continuation of what you've seen. The president has been out hitting the trail. He has been in targeted states every single day, some days, multiple states. You see the family out campaigning. You see the campaign surrogates out covering different areas within the country. You're going to continue to see this across those battleground states, as you mentioned, Pennsylvania, Florida, Nevada, Arizona. You're going to see the campaign and the candidate, the president himself, in those states talking directly to the American people. He's going to continue to hold large scale rallies and really get the base energized to turn out the get out the vote. We talked about this earlier in this home stretch. It's now about securing those individuals who may not be registered, getting out the vote, and ensuring that people show up on election day. And we're going to continue to see that. In terms of the narrative, the president will talk about the items we've seen through and through. Biden being a career politician, the Bidens being corrupt. He's going to continue to hone in on the family, the corruption, the fact that he had 47 years to accomplish what he's now talking about and he wasn't able to do anything. What does he have to show for it? And the president is going to paint a clear contrast between a Trump administration and a Biden administration. He's going to point to a line that you heard tonight. Success is what will bring us together. And the president is going to talk about his economic success and what the next 4 years could look like should there be a reelection of President Trump.
Yeah, for sure. I do know one thing is clear. We're talking about what the next 2 weeks look like tonight based on what happened during the debate. I guarantee by tomorrow afternoon, there'll be something else that has happened, which will probably change the race completely. But I'm looking forward to chatting again next week about this and seeing what's happening. And man, will I be excited once election day comes.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. There are more topics that have occurred since we began the Divide Guide than we can count on two hands. So we'll stay in store for what's up next for us and look forward to continuing the conversation, Jeremy.
Yeah, for sure. See you soon, Lindsay. Bye.